This is the Wizard News for Wednesday, December 22nd, 2021. Musical accompaniment by Greg Spero from the album Spirit Fingers. Many public schools fail to teach about diverse communities in their curriculum. For Native Americans, this disparity is even more stark. According to the National Congress of American Indians, 27 states make no mention of Native Americans in their K-12 curriculum, and 87% of state history standards do not mention Native American history after 1900. Access to learning about Native American heritage and culture in our educational institutions is a racial justice issue, according to the ACLU. Although some states have worked toward building their state curricula to more thoroughly and accurately discuss Native Americans, passing laws requiring schools to do so, those states are not now held accountable when they fail. The ACLU of Montana, and the Native American Rights Fund are suing the state of Montana for violating its legal obligation to ensure that all public school students have access to education about Native American culture and history. In 1972, after powerful organizing by Native American communities, the Montana Constitution adopted a provision that made a promise to all public school students that Indian education would be incorporated across all grades, subjects, and curricula. More than 2 decades later, in 1999, the Montana State Legislature passed the Indian Education for All Act, IEFA, to make good on Montana's unique constitutional promise after years of failing to deliver. The IEFA created educational requirements for Montana public schools to ensure that every Montana school child, whether Native American or not, has the opportunity to learn about the distinct and unique heritage of Native Americans. Yet, for decades since its enactment, the state has repeatedly broken that promise. Although the Montana Supreme Court has ruled that the state has a responsibility to implement the IEFA, the Montana Office of Public Instruction and the Montana Board of Public Education have failed to create uniform standards for implementing, monitoring, and enforcing Indian education as required by law. Only a small fraction of Montana's public school districts fully report whether and how they are spending IEFA funding, which means a school district might be using money specifically dedicated for Indian education for alternative purposes. In fiscal years 2019 and 2020, about 50% of IEFA funding to Montana public school districts went unaccounted for, according to annual trustees' reports the ACLU obtained via public records request. Some schools are using IEFA funds for things that may be harmful to students. One Montana elementary school used IEFA funds to purchase the book Squanto and the Miracle of Thanksgiving, which tells the story of English traders who captured a 12-year-old Native American boy, Squanto, and sold him into slavery. The book approaches the holiday from an evangelical point of view and fails to provide a Native American viewpoint, which can be damaging to Native students. This is just one example of how public educational systems in the United States historically have erased Native Americans and their perspectives. In addition to learning about the importance of Native American histories and modern-day contributions, teaching all students about Native culture and heritage can help reduce cultural misunderstandings, racial stereotyping, and fear-based ignorance. For Native American students, culturally responsive education can help foster belonging within the education system, support the growth and development of their identities, and help uphold the established political and legal sovereignty, independent governance of their tribes. All of these things can lead to greater academic success. Every student should have the right to receive an inclusive education and have an open and honest dialogue about America's history. But states across the country are trying to prevent this by banning discussions about gender and race in schools. This effectively erases the history and lived experiences of people of color and censors discussion around racism and the critical role it has played in American history. The echoes from our colonial past and the history of using education as an assimilationist tool continue to haunt students in our current schools. Source: ACLU, July 22, 2021.